Good evening, Santa Cruz. Welcome to Voices from the Village, community television's longest-running public affairs talk television program. I am your host, Sandino Gomez, and we're going to be chatting with three fine gentlemen today, all of which I definitely do not want to intimidate because they're going to potentially be the next sheriff of Santa Cruz County. Yes, that's right. Tonight on Voices from the Village, we're going to be talking to Bob Pursley, Jim Hart, and Roger Wildey about why they think they are the best candidates for the sheriff of Santa Cruz County, and your opportunity to ask some questions as well. This is, May 12th, Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I didn't say that first time. And yeah, we're going to be talking to these gentlemen about kind of what their vision for Santa Cruz County Sheriff is, what are some of the changes they hope to make, what are some of the things they'd like to continue, and yeah, it's going to be our opportunity to learn a little bit more. The special election is, I guess the primary election is June 3rd, so if you haven't already, get out there and register to vote, participate in our process. A lot of folks don't know they can actually elect the DA and elect the sheriff of a county, and that's a very powerful position that often gets neglected. But here in Santa Cruz, we have a very unique three-way sheriff's race, and we're here with all three candidates tonight. Across from me, we have Bob Pursley. His website is pursleyforsheriff2014.com. To Bob's left is Jim Hart. His website is hartforsheriff.com. And then to Jim's left, we have Roger Wildey. And Roger Wildey's website is rogerwildeyforsheriff.com. So you can learn more about those candidates there at their websites, and there's probably going to be some more public forums and opportunities for you to get a chance to speak to them, ask them some questions about the issues that you're concerned about. So keep your eyes out. These gentlemen are very willing to engage with our community, and we're lucky to have them here tonight. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sandino.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to point out my website is wildeyforsheriff.com.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Wildey for Sheriff. Let's get it right. Let's not misdirect them. Okay, wildeyforsheriff.com. We're going to give you guys a chance to do some opening statements here, so why don't we kick it off with Bob, right across from me. Why don't you just tell the people why you think you're the best candidate for sheriff and why should we vote for you?
Good evening. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I'm Bob Pursley. I'm the candidate for sheriff of Santa Cruz County. I was with the sheriff's office for 33 years. I retired last year. While employed at the sheriff's office, I rose to the ranks of deputy all the way through lieutenant. I retired as a lieutenant. During my time there, I was in just about every bureau, had a chance to work in every bureau and supervise every bureau as a sergeant and lieutenant. I was in narcotics, I ran the coroner's unit, I ran the gang unit, I was patrol watch commander when I retired. I was also the SWAT commander and bomb commander. I believe I bring several skills to the table as future sheriff because I have the ability to have tactical and critical thinking. And as being retired for the last year, I had the ability to go out and talk to people about the community and how the community felt about the sheriff's office. While I was with the community and getting unbiased information, I found out that the sheriff's office isn't doing a very good job. And I was under the impression that we were even when I was there. But now I have people telling me the truth. And that is an eye-opener for me. So based on that, as your sheriff, I would endeavor to make the sheriff's office a better sheriff's office that will serve the community and also reflect the community as a whole, because the sheriff's office right now does not currently reflect the community that it serves. I will look to hire more women and minorities to balance out the ranks of the sheriff's office. And that was also telling when someone pointed out a picture to me from the front of the Sentinel on the opening day of the new sheriff's office in Live Oak. Primarily in that picture were all white males. And that was a very telling picture for me. And my goal now is to strive to change that impression.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
To Bob's left and coming up with his, with his opening statement, we have Jim Hart. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Sandino.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and also wish everybody, all the moms out there, a happy Mother's Day, especially my mom and my wife. And I appreciate you having us here today.
Yeah.
I grew up here in Santa Cruz, and I've been here my whole life. I graduated from Harbor High School and went on to the University of Nevada, where I graduated in 1988. Upon graduation, I was given multiple job offers, and I could have gone to a lot of agencies, but I couldn't wait to get home. There's no place like Santa Cruz County. I love Santa Cruz. I love the people here. I love the beauty of the county and everything it has to offer. And so I couldn't wait to get home and start serving the community that was so good to me as I was growing up. I started out as a patrolman in 1988 and worked my way up through the ranks from deputy to sergeant to lieutenant to chief deputy. And I'm currently a chief deputy in administration. I'm the highest ranking deputy sheriff in the office that's not elected. I was the chief deputy in corrections in 2011 when prison realignment hit. And that wasn't a law that we asked for. That was a law that was given to us. That was passed down from Governor Brown's administration. And it was my job to come up with a thoughtful response to prison realignment. I worked very, very hard with my staff, and we came up with a very thoughtful plan that created bed space, but did not force us to build more jails, which I thought was a critical piece to our plan. I looked at everybody that was in custody. I looked at the number of misdemeanants who were in custody, and I found out that we had 23% of our inmate population was there for misdemeanors. And I really worked hard to get that population out. We used risk assessment tools. We assessed them out and put them on electronic monitoring, work release, sheriff's parole, and made some bed space for the 70 or 80 realigned inmates that were coming to us each year. We've now hit a leveling off stage where we have as many attriting out or timing out as we are receiving. So I think we've received about the level we're going to be at for quite a while now. We're not receiving thousands of state prison inmates. We're only receiving about 70 a year right now. I'm currently the chief deputy in administration, where most of my job is writing and managing our budget, which is about $75 million. I also oversee our 340 employees that work throughout the sheriff's office. I'm in charge of our community policing division, and I'm proud to say that in a recent poll, the sheriff's office received a 71% approval rating, which was the highest rating that any county department had. So I think our people are doing a great job. As the next leader of this organization, I'm going to strive to do an even better job. But I'm really happy that our people have done more with less now for many years. We are starting to see the economy come back, and we are going to be refunding 7 new deputy sheriff positions here in the coming year. And as the sheriff in year 2 and year 3 of my term, I want to get all 17 positions back that have been unfunded since the recession hit. I feel like I'm best qualified for this position for a number of reasons. I'm the only one, or the only candidate who's worked his way up through the ranks and continuously worked for the sheriff's office for the last 26 years, and the only one to work up to the position of chief deputy. I'm the only one to have managed and written the entire budget. I've shown that I have the ability to take a large-scale project such as prison realignment, such as the building and construction and management of that project of our new headquarters out in Live Oak. And I'm the only one that's been able to show that I can start that project, carry it all the way through to completion. I'm also the only candidate that's supported by our Deputy Sheriff's Association, our Correctional Officers Association, the 2 previous sheriffs, Sheriff Wowak, the Police Officers Association. All of those people and all of those groups have worked with us. They all know us, and yet they have all chose to endorse me. In order to run an operation this size or a law enforcement agency this size, you have to have the support of the people who work for you. And if you don't have that support, it's almost impossible to run this office. So I do have that endorsement, and I do have that support. I also have the support and endorsement of 4 of the 5 Board of Supervisors, the 4 city mayors from Scotts Valley, Capitola, Watsonville, and Santa Cruz, a majority of every city council, and most of the fire chiefs. I have these relationships in place, and there are crucial relationships to running a sound sheriff's office. Excuse me. Public safety is my top priority. And I will work very hard to make sure that Santa Cruz County is a place where everybody can live safely and without fear.
I watched that video too online on your website, a little bit about the new center.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting little tour. Yeah.
It's going to be really work well for our office and for the community. It's going to be great.
Probably quite an upgrade from the basement.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roger,
Well,
convince me, man.
all right. Happy Mother's Day, and I apologize that I've got a kind of an allergy attack, so I might sound like Mr. Froggy when I'm talking. I was born and raised in Santa Cruz County, raised in Live Oak, went to Soquel High School. I spent 4 years in the Navy, and then I went to UCSC and got my degree in politics from UCSC. I went on to San Jose State University and got my master's degree in criminal justice administration, and I'm also an FBI National Academy graduate. I'm an independent candidate who's not part of the political machine, which is what I'm mostly proud of. I base my decisions on facts, analysis, and I look at things from all sides from the left and the right, and try to come up with the best decision possible based on good decision making rather than ideology or politics. For example, I think marijuana enforcement is ridiculous in the county the way it's been done, and low-level marijuana enforcement should not be any kind of a priority and will not be a priority in my administration. On the other side of the spectrum, currently there are only 25 concealed weapon permits in the county, and that's ridiculous. So, I think there should be a more reasoned process for issuing those, particularly based on the Ninth Circuit Court that holds that California is a shall issue state. Jim Hart has said that he doesn't believe in that, and that he won't even give permits to correctional officers. So I'm different in that regard. But I look at things from both sides of the spectrum. I'm running because the current sheriff's administration has consistently failed the community in providing basic public safety. They've had 4 years to do it, and we're hearing all kinds of excuses, but all the people are dissatisfied, and the deputies are dissatisfied. They're leaving in droves. They hired 16 people last year. Those were all people that were dissatisfied. There's the public safety. Public is in jeopardy because, as Sheriff Wowak said in his report to the board on March 11th, in contrast to state and national trends, violent and property crimes have increased in the unincorporated areas of the county. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg with that, because with AB 109, thousands of prisoners are going to be released. Governor Brown has managed to delay that, but it's going to happen. And the office currently isn't making any provision for those prisoners other than this program that perhaps has won awards, but it's not proven at all. There's no statistics to back it up. Hard drug use and gang problems are rampant in the county. They've dramatically increased. The sheriff has turned the gang enforcement unit over to the district attorney's office and the drug enforcement unit, and the number of deputies and officers in those units is a fraction of what it was years ago, not too many years ago. And this is a part of the homeless issue, the mental health issue. I mean, this is something that I'll probably speak more on later on, but we need to address the hard drug use problem, methamphetamine and heroin, not marijuana. Hard drug use the minimum security facility closed 4 years ago because it needed repairs. It had some problems that it could have been fixed. That facility could have been, under this $25 million grant, could have been used for a couple of different things. It could have, part of it could have been used to kind of thwart the revolving door aspect of it, but it could have been creatively utilized to house homeless people and get them off the street and put them perhaps in a program to fix the roads, which have been in disrepair for 40 years around the county. And have you talk about a transitional program, we might be able to transition those people back in, give them food, give them a place to stay, and perhaps it would be the beginning of a turnaround with that. These are the kinds of innovative solutions that I would like to use. We could have also had a mental health facility out there that was specifically allowed in the grant. Instead, we have a severe mental health problem in the county that is no one is addressing. The mental health system is broken. We need creative solutions, not excuses. This administration always has a problem for every solution. I have a solution for every problem.
Fair enough. One of the questions I had sent to me that kind of activist friend of mine was asking about, heard I was going to do the show, so I've been kind of asking my friends and compatriots about questions to ask. And since you brought up homelessness, I just wanted to ask about kind of how you see that as a public safety issue, as a public health issue, as a mental health issue. I mean, there's lots of ways to look at homelessness. I believe personally, like, people are often, the homeless or houseless community is often scapegoated for problems that I don't think they really created or had a hand in any way, but are now trying their best through various ways to deal with it. So one of the things that has come up as an idea for kind of addressing the homeless issue, and that has worked in other communities, Portland, Oregon, various like towns of Washington, is a sanctuary camp. And there actually is a local movement, folks trying to hold meetings, work with social service providers, work with law enforcement to establish a sanctuary camp. So maybe we could just go do a quick round and just touch on the homelessness issue and how you see it related to your job as sheriff, and maybe even state whether you do or do not support a sanctuary camp or some kind of model that could be creative, a creative solution to houselessness and homelessness. And why don't we start, since you brought it up, we'll go back around the other way.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just 2 minutes or so, not a...
Okay, drugs, gangs, mental illness, and homelessness are intertwined. There's been so much talk about the needle exchange, we get bogged down with that. This is basically a health issue, not a law enforcement issue. It's a symptom of the problem, not a root cause. So there's absolutely no scientific way to evaluate the needle exchange program. And there were 4,754 needles found in the past 17 months. We might do one-to-one needle exchange, we might mark the needles, but it's still going to be enabling the drug users. And I question whether the large amount of money that's spent on that couldn't better be spent for what I'm saying, creating a place. And I'm not a favor of what they call a sanctuary camp at all. But we could do something, even with this grant, which perhaps is locked in tight right now. But I mean, the jail farm would be a perfect place to put Quonset huts up or have a tent city and do what I'm saying. Maybe have these people fix the roads. How many people in the county are tired of their roads being bad? And it might be a way to solve that problem and start helping the homeless as well. But we need to bring back the drug and gang units because mentally ill people tend to self-medicate, and that is a part of the problem. And the gangs bring those drugs into the county, and it's so cheap now because so much of the drugs are coming in that it's become a haven for people out of the county to visit our county to get drugs. So that it adds to the problem. All these problems have to be addressed together and real solutions thought of, not just treating the symptoms, treating the root causes.
Yeah. Great.
Well,
Jim?
Sandino, as a sheriff, I will never house somebody or treat somebody as a criminal who's based on their homeless status. And to suggest that we're going to house homeless at our county jail doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think what we need to do is we really we have to match services with needs. Yeah. And in the homeless census survey that was done, we know that 60% of the homeless have a disability, whether it's a mental health issue, a physical disability, or an addiction issue. And then 11% are veterans. 3% are unattended children or youth. And so we need to identify the needs of each of these groups and try to match up services. I'm an advocate to work collaboratively with our cities, the county, community-based organizations, mental health professionals, substance abuse professionals, the Veterans Administration, to come up with a long-term solution Simply moving this problem from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, whether Santa Cruz is pushing to Live Oak or Live Oak's pushing to Capitola, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. I think Santa Cruz County and the residents here are better than that, and we've got to get away from the not in my backyard attitude of pushing these people around and try to work collaboratively as cities, counties, and groups to try to really address what's the root cause of the homeless situation and try to get some treatment and some services in there, and then match them up and try to get some housing.
Nice. Bob?
On the homeless situation, first off, stats are nice. Stats give you a basis, but stats do not give you the true story. And while you're compiling stats, more people become homeless. Instead of getting out there on the ground, sitting down, talking with them, actually finding out what the cause and effect is as far as what caused them to be homeless in the first place. Start finding those people, assisting them first. If you start a move right away, instead of collecting stats, guess what? Things happen. It's nice you can look at notes and say you have this amount of percent, this percent, and that. We spend too much time worrying about what the stats are instead of actually getting on the ground and taking care of the problem. As far as having sanctuary camps, I'm all for that. But sanctuary does not mean you're free from following rules.
Oh, certainly.
Once you have a camp established, that you have to maintain order in those camps. If you're willing to go with the parameters of the camps, I see them being a very viable community within themselves, helping each other to get people back on their feet, back off the street into a home outside the camp. But until we stop compiling stats and making ourselves feel good about knowing what the numbers are, as opposed to actually touching people, this is never going to cure itself. Find the root cause, find the people you can affect first, get them off the street. Then you'll be able to weed through the other stuff that's out there, the drug use, the alcohol abuse. There are people out there that don't abuse drugs or alcohol or are mentally ill that are homeless. Let's get them off the street first. Then we can go back and look at the next group. But we need to take action now, not later, because as long as you're taking stats, you're not doing anything.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was insightful. I appreciate everyone's opinions and candor. Another question I had sent to me, and definitely can speak to personally, having also grown up here in the county and experienced various interactions with law enforcement. Again, I was definitely, I would say, a successful participant in some of the diversion programs, and I was put on a contract, I fulfilled it, yada yada. But a lot of people aren't that lucky, and I do think Santa Cruz has been recognized for its innovative law enforcement and helping at-risk youth, and a lot of really great things have happened, and I know the Sheriff's Department has to play some role in that. So I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about kind of what your plans are to engage youth that might have messed up or made some mistakes, but certainly could one day end up hosting their own television show.
All right.
Why don't we start with you, Jim?
Well, the Sheriff's Office, we're very involved with youth right now. And as your sheriff, I'm an advocate of restorative justice programs for youth. Programs where our school resource officers are heading off crimes or heading off incidents before they could happen. I want to partner, and we do partner. I want to continue to partner with the probation department. And incarcerating juveniles for low-level crimes does not do that juvenile any good. We need to get that juvenile back in the community, get the juvenile back in school, and really look at some programs where we're reducing juvenile incarceration as much as we can. I'm a strong advocate and proponent of working with youth. I've been a basketball coach at Scotts Valley High School for many years. I think we can really do some prevention by getting involved early and getting officers involved in children's lives early and get the community involved. The school resource program is a very school resource officer program is a very successful program. By having youth get used to talking to the police, we've gotten away from the DARE programs and those type of programs over the years. But I think some sort of intervention at that age, not necessarily intervention, but some involvement at that age is important. Right now, I'm advocating for a school truancy program where kids that are chronically truant, and chronic truancy is defined by 10 absences or more in a year, where law enforcement, the DA, probation, and the schools are working together to get that child back in school. And they're working with the parents and the child and the school as a group to quit the absenteeism and get that child back in school so that they get their education. I think those type of models are excellent prevention.
Cool. Bob, how would you
Jim?
work with the youth of our county to?
Jim briefly touched on it, but I'm going to expand on it. Parents, everything starts in the home first. You have to be able to identify those behaviors and have the parents be able to identify the behaviors that would actually set the youth on a negative spiral, on a bad path. That's our job, is to bring it to the parents and say, look, these are the things you need to start looking for. Head it off in your house first before law enforcement becomes involved. If it becomes such that law enforcement has to be involved, then we bring the schools in, we bring the parents in, instead of just coming at you like, here the cops come, we're going to deal with you. Right. It should be a collaborative effort, and that should lead the youth into a positive path to follow, as long as there are guidelines and expectations placed out there that they know they have to meet. I think this will actually bring them into a better path for success. Without a path for success, there will be none. And if you don't have people that are helping you down that path and the correct path, success will never be met. So it has to be a collaborative effort on all parts, not just one part, the other part. Everybody working together, but it all starts in the home.
Certainly. Roger?
Well, there's a lot of good programs out there that work some of the time. But you know, I started the school resource officer program for the sheriff's office. And pardon my voice. Years ago, I started the school resource officer program, and I believing that you should know something about what you're in charge of. I went to the school resource officer school with the first school resource officer, and John Scanlon, who lives over in Hawaii, and he's still a big fan of mine. And I work closely with Ron Kinninger, who still works actively in the schools. Really nice guy, very smart guy, and he's a big supporter of mine as well. And I believe in innovative solutions, again, going beyond these programs. When I started the school resource officer program, I thought that it was not a good thing, because I figured having a cop on campus was going to scare the kids. Nothing could be further than the truth. Having a cop on campus lets them identify, get to know the deputy on campus, and establishes a relationship, a communication that goes a long way. I think we should expand on the school resource officer program and have school resource officers or security guards. We have security guards with the sheriff's office, and I'd like to expand on that and have them on virtually every campus, including elementary schools. And after Columbine, I conducted all the training with the schools for the emergency planning and things like that. And I came up with training scenarios, tabletop exercises, to be able to train the school personnel on how to react to these kinds of emergencies. The same kind of thing could be done with the youth. We could have a tabletop exercises that would be fun for the kids, would capture their imagination, and get them to really start identifying with the deputies and the security guards on campus. And with that relationship, even if the parents aren't the best parents, if they're your friend, it's like I worked out with my two sons for years every day after school. And after about 10 minutes, they'd start talking to me and telling me what was going on. And that's what kids do, So if you got that relationship and communication, so it needs a personal relationship. So that's what I would endeavor to do.
Okay, great. So we have a question from our call-in audience, I believe, here, and it's directed at Jim. And this isn't my question, but apparently someone has asked, did you at one time say medical marijuana is as bad as heroin? And could you talk a little bit about marijuana enforcement? Maybe we could even go around the table there. This is just something that someone said, so don't look at me here. But kind of, would you talk a little bit about like maybe the drug war and your stance on medical marijuana and kind of how it relates to the rest of the drug war?
Sure. Yeah, I've never said medical marijuana is worse than heroin or the same as heroin. I'm not sure where that came from.
We got to fact check these people.
Yeah, exactly. In the 90s, I did work on narcotics teams and I did work marijuana enforcement. The times were different then. The laws were different. The times have changed. Both of these gentlemen, they both worked on narcotics enforcement teams over the years as well. So you have to be able to adapt with the times. I've worked very well with the medical marijuana advocates over the years. I will always follow the law. There's a new county ordinance that was just enacted that limits the number of plants somebody can grow and the square footage. I will always have my deputies follow that. I'm not interested in investigating any of the dispensaries or any of the medical marijuana community, period. I do have the support and the endorsement of Ben Rice, who is a strong medical marijuana advocate and an attorney in town. The local managing partners of the Public Defender's Office, Larry Bigham, John Minsloff, and Jerry Christensen, they both support and endorse me because they know that I'm always going to follow the law and do what the law says.
Cool. Bob, would you like to share your policy towards medical marijuana and kind of just touch on anything on the drug war?
Sure. I was a narcotics officer. I was undercover for 5.5 years, total time. I worked in Santa Cruz. I worked in the Bay Area, pretty much up and down the state. The drug war was one of those wars that was necessary at the time. Was it a success? No. Right now, there is a change afoot. Marijuana is going to be legal soon. But with that, you can't lay off of the laws that are set forth. The dispensaries need to be able to operate and operate safely. They need to be able to get their product from possibly licensed and certified growing operations. That will preclude the growing operations that are happening in residences, which cause fires and neighborhoods burning down. Environmental impacts because of illegal grows outside. Once we have parameters set for the dispensaries and how they get their product and monitoring that, then we do need some type of enforcement wing to actually make sure that the illegal actions are being stopped. What that will do is bring some legitimacy, more legitimacy to what the dispensaries are trying to do by getting people their medicine who need it, by being able to get that product to dispense legally, and keep an eye on it. It's like saying, okay, alcohol is legal, but we're not going to enforce drunk driving laws. It doesn't make any sense. So as far as saying we're not going to enforce marijuana laws, I think that's kind of a misnomer. You have to look at, there needs to be some type of enforcement on certain actions and certain laws that will still probably be in place. But as far as the dispensaries, I would look forward to working with the collaboratives as law enforcement to make sure that they're able to stay in business, and why not have Santa Cruz be the role for the United States as opposed to Colorado. Santa Cruz should have been first at this, but we're not. But we can make it better once someone else, we see their mistakes and we can correct them and move upon them and make it a lot better.
Certainly. I think it was Proposition 19 in California, previous election cycle, got 48%, something like that. A very, very narrow defeat. And
Right.
certainly, yeah, and since that time, Colorado, Washington, it's a change in times. Change in times.
Yes.
Roger, you want to just touch a little bit on medical marijuana? And
Sure. Well, my feeling is that enforcing low-level marijuana laws is absolutely ridiculous. In this county, it's I was born and raised here, and I know how marijuana-friendly this community is, and I believe in enforcing the law according to community standards. And it's quite clear that the community standards of this county are friendly towards marijuana. So, if it's a drug cartel, if they're destroying the environment, if they're on somebody else's property stealing water or something like that, then yeah, I think the laws should be enforced. But other than that, no. And I heard this same statement that Jim Hart made before as well. And I don't know, by his own admission, he worked in narcotics or enforcement or drug enforcement, mostly marijuana enforcement, for 10 years. He was, in 1992, He arrested Mike and Valerie Corral for 5 plants. In 2001, supervisor for marijuana enforcement team, stated that in court that he believed it was a felony to cultivate marijuana whether you have a prescription or not. At a forum with Zach Friend, when asked his position on marijuana, he said he's tired of the permissiveness in Sacramento and that he'll bust everybody who is not in compliance with federal law. I'm not a big person, and I believe in the Constitution, and so I don't really believe in working with the feds if we don't have to, and what we don't need to work with them on. There are another aspect of this is the incarceration. You talk about reducing incarceration in California. There are approximately 1,500 inmates incarcerated in state prisons for marijuana-only offenses. This costs $50,000 per year per inmate for an annual cost of $75 million. This is from the grand jury report from 2010-2011. Approximately $1,360,000 are spent on marijuana arrests, prosecutions, and convictions in a single year in Santa Cruz County. And that's from the same grand jury report. Many of the convictions over the years have been for low amounts of marijuana plants, sometimes only a single plant. Now, if you think that Jim Hart is going to change that, I'd be very surprised, but I will.
Fair enough.
Sandino, since Mr. Wildey's quoting things that I've allegedly said, I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
That what he just said is an absolute untruth. I never said that. I've held the same message in this campaign now for over 70 days, and it's the same message every time, everywhere I go. I've never said that I will follow federal law, so I'm not sure what he's talking about there. I'm very aware of our current policy. We do not have a single person working marijuana enforcement in our office. And as the administration chief, I dictate a lot of that policy. As the sheriff, I will dictate all that policy. But those untruths, that's just spreading fear among community members when those types of things are said. That was never said. And I just want to be clear that I will always follow the law. And I'm not talking about what the DEA enforces, because they don't really work in this area. I'm talking about what our local laws are and what the laws are in the state of California.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, certainly positions can change, and I think that's a very important aspect of any thinking, rational individual is you can, move forward, and there's nothing wrong with change and change in policies and change in laws. I think it's a very good thing. So, speaking of change, something I've noticed here in the Santa Cruz community growing up has, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call the browning of our town. And, Bob, you touched on it a little bit, that the sheriff's department doesn't necessarily reflect what our community looks like, and not through any intentional policy, certainly, but just by the nature of the institution and the slow change that we've been making as a nation towards a society where everyone really is equal. We are all treated equally under the law, where we are all given access to the same kind of opportunities. And I've just seen this town really change in terms of who lives here, and I'm kind of curious what you, as sheriff candidates and as a sheriff, if you were, how would you engage the Latino community and work to kind of address some of the problems? In particular, I do think of kind of incarceration and the fact that, I think as a population, let's just say, Latinos, African Americans, we're overrepresented in, facilities of incarceration, and I think underrepresented in a lot of other important places. So I'm just curious how you would work with the, in particular the Latino community, because I think it's one of the largest immigrant communities. But speaking of immigration as well, I wanted to ask you all point blank as well about whether you support the Secure Communities program. And Roger had written in some of his campaign literature about not wanting to enforce strict letter of the law immigration policy, which I believe was a reference to the Secure Communities program, which has deported people, including people I know, and has really destroyed families. I mean, I think it's beyond you guys' control, but Obama's policy on immigration, I think, has just been really criminal and really a shame. He's deported more people than any other, president in the history of this nation. And it's, I think, something very much at the forefront of a lot of migrant and Latino families in our community. So I just want to ask you guys kind of how you plan to engage some of those issues. And I know we touched on a little bit at the forum, but I actually didn't get to hear that question. Those responses, I got a phone call, so I had to step out. But I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about your plans to engage immigrant community, and in particular the Secure Communities program, because I do think it's incredibly harmful for our county. And why don't we kick it off with Bob?
First off, I would actually engage the community, not by having a committee, but actually going into the community, sitting, talking with people, go where they live, go where they socialize, go where they shop, to actually get a random sampling of their opinions. Find out what they're thinking, find out what they think of the sheriff's office, find out what they think about immigration, how that affects them, and then take all of that information and try to formulate a plan with the help of the community to make it a little bit better place for them to live and be able to live without fear of some type of enforcement action being taken upon them just while they're going to the grocery store, or being afraid to talk to law enforcement when crimes do happen and they're a victim of crime. They're already wary of law enforcement as it is. We need to be able to soften that and create a bridge so they can come across and talk to us. As far as the secure communities, unfortunately that is federal law, but that was actually based on incidents of terrorism. So what the federal government did was they cast a wide net. That net was supposed to catch anyone from those quote-unquote terrorist countries coming in here. Unfortunately, it didn't differentiate between a terrorist and someone who came into the country illegally for the purposes of employment, bettering their families' lives, and trying to get their citizenship. They tried to correct it a little bit by the amnesty program, but I think by then it was too late because so many people had been affected. I think that this needs to be changed, but it's not going to change overnight, and you actually have to get the people to move themselves on it, not just wait for us to do it, because as law enforcement, we're too small of a community to make a greater impact on it, as opposed to the people standing up and saying enough is enough. So that's how a lot of change is made. I'm not talking about overthrow of the government. I'm not talking about actually standing up and say, I knew you were waiting.
Oh, man.
But actually stand up and be counted and say, this has to stop. We have to look at what the intent was and maybe go back to that intent. Restart the amnesty program, rebuild it so it actually does work and it works efficiently, and give people that ability. I mean, they're moving now toward driver's licenses. This will actually stop a lot of that activity from happening because, one, if you're stopped and you have a driver's license, there's no more crime other than writing you a ticket for what you got pulled over for, as opposed to arresting you for operating a motor vehicle without a driver's license. So it's California is actually starting to whittle away at all of the causes that would have people arrested and deported. Now, when you get into the violent crimes, you get into the sexual assaults, the normal assaults, all of that, then that's a whole different ball of wax.
Certainly.
But as far as being able to go from your home to the grocery store or pick your kid up at school, you should not have to worry about being stopped and deported just for those normal everyday activities. I say California is moving that way to help that.
Great. Swing over to Roger.
Well, I think the enforcement of immigration is ridiculous in this community. I was born and raised here, and it's been an immigrant community since before I was born, when the Dust Bowl ended. And the people here kind of, a lot of people kind of want their cake and eat it too. They want the migrant workers doing the hard work that nobody else wants to do in the fields, but yet they don't want them in the community. And you can't have it both ways. Again, I tend to look at all sides of the issues, and I don't go by party lines. And I know there are a lot of people who disagree with me on this, but I will, it's like the NDAA and other federal, intrusive laws that they use for a whole bunch of things. They came in and took the guy's cattle in Nevada. That was a fiasco. I don't want to see that happen in Santa Cruz County.
Yeah.
The sheriff is the chief law enforcement agent or chief law enforcement official in the county, And I would stand up to the federal government and say, look, we'll work with you to felons, high-level offenders, sure.
Violent offenders.
Violent offenders. We don't want those people in the community. But as far as low-level offenders, it's a travesty what goes on, because they end up getting deported, then they pay the coyotes $5,000 to come back across the border. I know people that do that.
Yeah.
But I've personally helped people that have been victimized. I know a guy that works at the local market, and he's a great guy. And he was sitting in his car drinking a beer, but because the keys were in the ignition, he was arrested for drunk driving. And I personally went to court and got his offenses expunged so that he could become a citizen. And he is now a citizen. I'm very proud of it. So I'm the kind of guy who's going to personally become involved in those things, and I want to bond with the community and let them know that the sheriff is not their enemy, that the sheriff wants to work with them.
Great, thank you. And Jim?
Well, first of all, as your sheriff, I will never have my deputies check immigration status in the field. That is not their job. When I was the corrections chief, I saw the amount of net widening that was going on with the Secure Communities program. There was people coming in on driver's license violations or public intoxication. One time arrest, they had a bad night, something happened, and 24, 48 hours later, they're on a plane to their home of origin. Right. And I saw the impact that was having on local families, hard-working families, and people who have been here for a long time. So what we did is we took, I had all the non-retainable offenses pulled out of the system so that the people arrested for those violations, those fingerprints were not sent to Secure Communities. And that had a very, very solid reduction in the number of ICE releases that were done. It almost cut it in half. The other thing that people, that I will never, and I really advocate for through our community policing division and talking with the police departments in our local communities, is that we will never check the immigration status of a victim of a crime. So people from wherever they're from need to feel comfortable in calling us and reporting a crime so that they will not be further victimized. Right now there's some challenges because if a woman is a victim of a domestic violence, she's afraid to report it because then the sole breadwinner of the home is then deported. Right. And we've changed some of our reporting on this, and you're going to see some big changes coming up in the next week on this. The other thing I want to touch on is the AB 60 and the driver's license bill. Some surrounding states have tried this, Arizona and Nevada, and the initial fail rate was over 90% in both those states. So what I want to advocate for, because I'm a proponent of the driver's license, I think it's important that everybody has a driver's license, that they understand the rules of the road and they have a piece of identification with them. But I'm advocating for our local colleges, our local county office of education to put together a training class on how to pass this test. What these surrounding states have found is once somebody took a class on how to pass the test, their pass rates were right in line with the national or the state average. So it's great to have a driver's license bill, but we need to give these people who are applying for them a chance to pass it through some education. Yeah. But I want to be real clear on Secure Communities. As the sheriff, I understand the challenge with that. There's the big challenge that's been around statewide with the 58 sheriffs in the 58 counties is that in one piece of the document it says this is a demand to produce this person, and the other says it's a request. Well, the chief of Homeland Security, Daniel Ragsdale, recently put out a memo to all 58 sheriffs saying it's no longer a demand, it's a request. So with that
gives you some leeway.
With that, coupled with a new case law that just came out of the circuit court in Oregon, you're going to see some huge changes in local immigration policy here in the next week.
Glad to hear it. We are getting towards the end of our show, and I'm going to give you guys a minute or two to do a closing statement. But I thought before we do, why don't we just take a minute and we could ask everyone, what does community policing mean to you, essentially? Like, what does it mean to be involved in the community in a significant way, beyond like just enforcing the law, but like what role can the sheriff's department play in creating healthy communities right here in Santa Cruz County? Let's see, whose turn is it? Why don't we kick off with you, Jim?
Well, our community policing division, since the budget cuts, it was a very robust program. Since the budget cuts, it's still in place. They're still doing a great job in our community policing division. But we have 6 substations throughout the county, and we have supervisors or sworn deputies in every one of those substations except one. And it's a very important piece of each community in San Lorenzo Valley, Aptos, South County, the Summit, Cabrillo College, Live Oak, where people living in that community have a place to come and talk to an officer, report a crime, ask a question. But the other thing that these substations do is they do community outreach, things like Neighborhood Watch and National Night Out. And they run our Sheriff's Activity League, where we service over 500 kids in Junior Giants baseball and futsal. And people feel comfortable talking to our officers. And so I think our community policing division is robust. We're going to continue growing it with the community volunteers. As your sheriff, I want our volunteers out patrolling neighborhoods. I want them doing vacation watches. I want our volunteers active in the community so that we have that connection from the community to the sheriff's office. The last thing I want to do through our community policing division is have a sheriff's advisory group. That when I'm sheriff, 11 people from the 11 beats in the county and 4 people from the 4 cities will come and meet with me monthly and talk to me about problems or challenges they're having in the areas where they're living. I want to be open, I want to be transparent, I want to have that communication with the community.
Great. Bob, what does community policing mean to you, and how would you implement it here? We only have about a minute or so for these responses, because I want to give you guys time for your last statements.
Great. First thing, I don't believe in a cop in a box. It's nice for a place for the community to go if they have to. That deputy in there or the sergeant in there needs to be out into the community, not wait for the community to come to them. People want to see someone in uniform in their car, in their neighborhood. They want to know who that person is in that car. And as your sheriff, I would demand that that person in the car get out of the car, talk to people, go to where the people go and find out what's going on, as opposed to having someone come to me on a group once a month. All of my deputies should know what's going on in the streets all of the time, as far as the community sentiment, how they feel we're doing our job. We shouldn't have to phone them with robocalls to get a survey and get a 70% approval rating, which I think is poor. The deputies should be out there talking to the community, find out what they need, what we can do to help them, and make them feel safe where they live.
Great. Roger?
Well, I think the important thing about community policing, what I'm going to do is become personally involved in this. Community policing is, for a long time with our office, has been just used as a platitude. They say they're involved in community policing. They really don't even know what community policing is. Community policing is getting members of the community to become involved with you, establishing that communication, and then coming up with innovative, non-traditional law enforcement methodologies to address real problems. But our office at the current time doesn't ask people what the real problems are. Mm-hmm. They don't ask the deputies what the real problems are. I want to see community volunteers in every area of the county, and I want to personally attend meetings with those people. I don't want an advisory group that's going to become politicized and tell me what the local people that think they're important want. I want to know what the citizens themselves want, and I want to be personally involved in coming up with innovative solutions. So yeah, that's what a leader does.
Cool, great. Well, we have almost come to the end of our show. I want to thank Bob, Jim, Roger for coming down, sharing your positions. And why don't we just take a minute each for closing statements. Tell the public anything you didn't get a chance to say, and why should we vote for you? Why don't you kick it off, Bob?
Once again, I'm Bob Pursley. I'm running for sheriff of Santa Cruz County. I am not heavily endorsed by any group at all, which I'm actually kind of proud of, because as your sheriff, when I make a decision, I will not be beholden to any one group to make sure that I did the right decision to make them happy. I'm making that decision to make the community and the county of Santa Cruz happy, not one special interest group. I don't have their money, and I am not using that as a concern or a consideration when I make the decisions. I make the decisions for the best of the community, and once again, for the best of Santa Cruz County. I will be fair and impartial, and make sure, once again, that our office reflects the community that it serves, and make sure that it will serve it appropriately.
Great. Roger?
Well, as with Bob, you know, I'm proud that I don't have any of these political endorsements because I'm not beholden to anybody. But you know, what I want to do is take a look at the practical things that have been just totally neglected and lost. You know, we often have only 7 deputies on the street. I would put until we can get some more money, I'd take people out of other areas and put more deputies on the street, bring back a 4th shift so we have double the number of deputies on the street in the evening during the highest crime times. I'd bring back the reserve program. We could have 50 reserves in a very short period of time. You know, things like that that are important. You know, that's what I want to do. I want to take a practical look, and I want to be a leader in that endeavor. You know, I'm going to be the leader, not someone who just goes along with a program or does what's righteous. I'm going to do what's right.
Great. And sorry, Jim, really quickly, go for it.
So I love this community, Sandino. This community is a wonderful place to live. I've worked at the Sheriff's Office my entire adult life. I love this office. Our office is doing a fantastic job, and as your next sheriff, we're going to do even a better job. I have a lot of endorsements. I'm endorsed by a lot of groups. The deputy sheriffs, the correctional officers are behind me, and I think that's what matters is the groups that will be working for me are behind me.
Great. Thank you so much. This is From the Village. I'm Sandino Gomez here with Bob Pursley, Roger Wildey. Third vote for the person you thought represented you the best.